So, well, we had a number of presentations talking about the future of learning, about formal, informal to formal, formal to back to informal. We have a great innovator here, Dr. Perry, that we saw here, that he's already doing it. We saw two different formats, the short format as well as long format. So the future is already here, but it's just unevenly distributed, and we are witnessing that right here. I'm going to take just about 20 minutes to talk about a innovator or a entrepreneur's perspective. So we've been listening since last night, the educator side, and this morning we had a lot of great educator perspective, but hey, we are in Silicon Valley, so we got to balance that out and see. And I think someone in the morning at Adrian's panel, or Matt's panel actually, Matt asked a really good question, that are we going to see innovation from the core, or are we going to see it from the edges? So I'm coming in from the edges, and I'll bring my perspective to it. So my mission or our mission and my team is about innovations in education at scale. So how do we take it to millions and billions of people? And when we talk about scale, the first thing that, the elephant in the room is that it's about mobile. We are in an era where first time we have 2 billion smartphones, right? And so what it means is that there are 2 billion people who are consuming information, who are ready for learning, and who are thirsty for knowledge. And it's also interesting that there are now more mobile phones on the planet than number of people. So what I call, with Dr. Perry here, I call this as the weapons of mass education, WME. So if we as a community here can figure out that how can we use these WMEs, I think we can change the world. And we have the power of it. The smartphones today has more computing power than what NASA had to put the Apollo mission to the moon, literally. In terms of, if you look at the number of CPU, the CPU power, these are very powerful devices. And I have a personal story that relates to the Defense Department. So when I was working at the White House as a Presidential Innovation Fellow, I was deployed for Afghanistan to solve the mobile payment issue, because we wanted to recruit teachers and local nationals to join the Afghan National Police. And we had a hard time recruiting, although we figured out somehow how to pay them. And I realized that everyone in Afghanistan, even if we go out remote outside of Kabul, everyone had a mobile phone. So could we use the mobile phone as first an education mechanism, and so that we can use education as a way to recruit these people and get them trained? And then the second problem is paying. So my whole perspective changed. Although I was brought in to solve the payment problem, I said, well, the underlying problem is the education problem, and let's try to solve that, and then we can bring our troops back. So I have a personal connection to this, that how do we use this and leverage this. Now, one of the ideas that we have is that, today, or if you look at the past 400 years of whatever the formal education, it's been really about long form. So I think someone on the panel talked about the definition. I think Marty from UC Berkeley was talking about, hey, this whole definition and this course structure, that everything is about a course, that itself could be questioned, and is that definition changing? And if we keep thinking in that formal context, then we are keeping our addressable market. I'm talking in a VC speak here. TAM stands for, by the way, in the Valley, the venture capitalists use this term, which is total addressable market. I know educators would like to think of students or users as a market, but we limit ourselves to only 200 million people who are across the board learning in a formal course context. In order to really think big in terms of how do we really reach to 2 billion people, we have to really move on to a new format, which Dr. Perry demonstrated, which is a short form. How do we get bite-sized? And really, the 2 billion people are only going to be engaged if we create a whole new culture. If we look at every movement that has penetrated, if smartphones, whether Facebook, that has all penetrated at 2 billion level, is because they became a movement, they became a culture. Today we are all addicted into a culture where 4 times in the day we are looking at our social media or our social network. So education has to become a culture, and for that we will have to create a purpose-built content. We can't just reformat and repurpose the content that was created for the course. And then to put all that content, you need a network. So again, we have all tried to use existing social networks, whether it is trying to use Pinterest for education and Facebook groups for education and tweeting for education. Those are all great, and YouTube, and these are all great networks, by the way. But in order for education to succeed and to get to the 2 billion people, we'll need a purpose-built network. And Susan talked about, her title was about knowledge networks. And so here, we always think in terms of, from a Silicon Valley perspective, how do we build networks? And we need a knowledge network. And it's surprising, in 2015, yes, we don't have a knowledge network that was purpose-built to get 2 billion people engaged. So how do we engage now in knowledge networking? What is really needed? Well, number one was the first step was the unlocking of the content. That started, we heard that yesterday from, started at MIT from 2001. The next thing that is needed is unbundling, and I think MOOCs are doing a great job. We heard about in Jason's talk, they're all starting to gain ground. And MOOCs and CBE, we heard from Scott yesterday as well. The third thing is, we have to fit that within the daily activities. So you have to make it really media rich, what Jackie talked about, interactive formats, and turn it into a K-bytes. So this is like what Larry Page talks about, the CEO of Google, that anything that has to become a culture or an addictive has to pass the toothbrush analogy. So you have to be doing it twice a day. So you can only do it twice a day if it is really fits within your lifestyle. So the lifelong learning is not going to happen until we turn education into a lifestyle. And education is not turned into a lifestyle. It's still kind of an activity out there that has a higher barrier, so we don't psychologically feel that we are learning without learning. And then ultimately, has to be blending of that informal to formal learning, so that the informal learning becomes really an on-ramp to the formal learning. So essentially, we are creating new work for the movement. In 2004, there was podcasting, tweeting, and our version is Edcasting. And we're very honored and grateful that we have some of the greatest well-known experts in various fields, from medicine to health, to technology to edtech, who are already started casting. One of the cool feature I think some of people talked about here is that development content, if you just develop content in a traditional way, like you produce videos, and it costs tens and thousands of dollars, and you can't change them so rapidly because you've invested so much money in it. So although the MOOC format works, but we need now another format of creating content very rapidly. So you've all heard that how people are hooked onto now Periscope and Mirkets. So that's the similar thing where we will have to give the power of creating content to communities, and that content has to come together, and instructors and educators will become more like a curator, where they're curating content coming across from multiple sources and data streams, and it's further personalized to using AI to a personal profile or your preferences that you're interested in learning. So essentially, I'm going to show you quick demos on some of the innovations that we've been working on. But anybody in the world now, like 7 billion people or 2 billion people who has access to a smartphone, they can get their own personalized handle, and they can start Edcasting. Like Dr. Perry has an Edcast handle / WJ Perry project. And is some interesting content that is being created, which you can see here. And this is very non-traditional sources, and that is very interesting to kind of change kind of the thinking, not just institutional, but break the boundaries and think from a global perspective. Here's a company, EMC. They have a lot of knowledge. They're the market leader in big data, and they have produced an amazing amount of content in terms of big data that you can learn from. So here is their president, and he's created a course on big data that 15,000 people today are taking that course, and it's completely free. So this is addressing what Jason talked about, the STEM challenge, right? That we need more and more computer scientists. It's not going to come just from thinking in the traditional way. We'll have to collaborate. Educators will have to collaborate with subject matter experts like EMC or Jeremy. And you can see here that there is a full course that if you have time for it, you can take a complete course. But if you just want to keep in touch in between courses, where after the course, when the conversation dies down, you can still continue to be in touch with your cohort as well as with your instructor on a short bite-sized knowledge. The other interesting thing is that on my page here, which I am testing, you can see that we have created content where Neil here has been, when I was speaking, this content was already being live streamed and tested. So it's already there over here, and millions of people worldwide can now watch this video. So this is something that can be used in classroom, this can be used outside of classroom, and we've really kind of unlocked the content from anywhere in the world. The other interesting thing is I was teaching a class last semester on entrepreneurship at UCLA. I'm just as a visiting person. And the easiest way for me to keep in touch with, because most of my students actually, they were faster and they knew more than me, because I'm too busy doing my work. And then when I went to UCLA and started teaching about entrepreneurship, and these are students who are in their 30s and 40s, so they're already working in the field, and it was not so surprising to me, but it was surprising. But a lot of other instructors at UCLA told me that when they are going to the class, they're finding out that the students have much more knowledge because they're up to the speed to it. So what I did was I partnered with one of our a discovery tool. Anand is somewhere here, and he has a fantastic discovery tool here, where I would go and turn it, look for an entrepreneurship channel, and I want to say, okay, here is building a technology product company. And this is a knowledge bite that I was able to put in with just one click. So I can go here and I can hit share button, and I can share it on my Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, or even here on EdCast, and I can just share it here, and boom. Now all my students who are taking this class from me, they can get that content. So you can see here, building a technology company. So for me, every day, looking at 5 things that are going on in my field of entrepreneurship that I want my students to know, in like 5 minutes, I'm able to take that content. I'm essentially becoming a curator and curating it, and my students are following it, and I'm getting rich feedback from that. So these are kind of the tools that are now possible that were not available even like few months back. So this is kind of the cutting edge innovation that we are seeing that's totally brand new. Another interesting thing is that I could be every day, every morning I read TechCrunch, which is kind of the Bible here in the Valley. So I go here and I look at an article on unbundling of finance. Again, just with one click, I'm able to post this article, and I'm again curating, because this is something that I feel that my students should be reading this. So I'm curating them from an information overload, because there is a ton of information overload every day, and we want to learn and read from specific people whom we trust.